This morning's message is a message that lays close to my heart. It's mostly going to be an applicational message. In that sense, it will be easier to understand. Not so easy to apply, perhaps, but easier to understand. And the topic, again, it's the choice of my own words. You could give it perhaps a different wording. But I have called the topic this morning, the structure of your home. So we're going to talk this morning about home life, family life, more so on home. I have a question for you. When you hear the subject of home life, what comes through your mind first? What goes through it? Let's say if you hear that somebody is getting married, there's a couple and they got engaged and they're planning to get married, then we're all having a set of thoughts. They're getting married. Usually, and rightfully so, it is with some level of excitement. That's exciting. We rejoice with that. We're happy for the two that are getting married in most cases. Then you come to another subject, you have a family, and let's say you have 3 or 4 children, and we're starting to think family life. We're talking home life, we're talking child training, we're talking leadership and submission, and it's all part of a family life. What comes to your mind in that case? I was thinking about that. And don't know that I can necessarily pinpoint, that comes to my mind. But in most cases, I think we can safely say that it's more of a sense of responsibility. We talk more of perhaps failure or the lack of knowing how to. And with that, we tend to sometimes lean a little bit in that direction. Well, it's all part of the truth, and it could all be part of that. But as a family, we went through the book of Ecclesiastes a while ago. And, read it for yourself. Ecclesiastes is written by Solomon. And in chapter 2, verse 24, this is the verse that I first wanted to bring our attention to before we dive into the subject. It says, "There is nothing better for a man." Now listen to that. You could use your name there as well as a woman. But there is nothing better for a man. What is that? What do you think that would be? This is the Bible saying. It's not a magazine out of the world. It's not some kind of a propaganda of luring you into a trap. It's the Word of God. It says, there is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw that it was from the hand of God. Now that verse, I am pretty sure that if I had read it somewhere, and I would have said, I brought a magazine or a book and I got it just off the shelf from a local library, and that's what I read in there, you might question whether that was really a fundamental, godly inspired book. Because it sounds sort of superficial, too good to be true, a little bit too much of that, perhaps we would say. You know why I wanted to use this verse before I dig into the subject is because that is really, I think, as we look into the heart of God, that is something that should come to you and to my mind. It doesn't matter how many children, it doesn't matter where in the home structure, in the family life you and I are, but it should be something of an enjoyable approach, something that you rejoice in. There is nothing better for a man than to rejoice. And nothing better for a man that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. That word labor does not have something to do with your punch clock where you want to be tomorrow morning. It has something to do with that keeping the home. It's not necessarily about sweeping the floors. It's maybe part of that, but it's labor to raise a family. It is labor to keep a marriage going. A young couple that came for a marriage premarital counseling, and some of you might be listening that I said this too, and I have said this to some people, and I said, if you want to live an easy life, don't get married. If you want to live a very fulfilled life, get married. And what I mean with that is, it is not easy to keep your marriage. It's like really vibrant and rejoicingly so. It's labor. Now, labor is not a negative word, so let's get that clear. Anyway, so enough of that. Now, let's dig into the subject. The topic, as I said, is the structure of your house, of your home. I want us to take our thoughts to Genesis chapter 18. We have our good friend Abraham there. He is 99 years old at this time, and God is saying something about him. I wish that God would say something about you and me sometime, and just let us read it. I don't know if Abraham ever read Genesis 18, verse 19. Honestly, I don't think he did. But God said it. God said something about Caleb. When Caleb was 45 years old, God said something about him, and it's written in the Bible today. Don't know that Caleb really ever read that in his version of Bibles. God is saying, or could be saying, stuff about you, what you will be in the next 20 years. God already knows that. That is, in a sense, unreal to us. We might not be able to connect with that, but there would be so much good if what God said about us would be what he said about Abraham, what he said about Caleb, and what he said about many others. When I think of raising a family and having a home or keeping it upright, then we would all like to know, God, what do you have to say? What's going to be there 20 years from now when my little babies will all be grown up? What will that be like? And God would say to you, this is what it will be like. I was listening to a part of a series of messages with some brothers here a few months ago, and the thought came out and said, let future write you a letter. And I don't know if we can grasp the concept, but let's just say that you have a system 20 years from now that's writing you a letter today. And then you could read today what 20 years from now will be. And then the letter would write that way, and it would say, 2021 in February, I was discouraged. And in my discouragement, I did so or so. That's what the letter would read 20 years from now. Or it would read that in February of 2021, I was encouraged by God's word. I faced a big challenge, but I was determined not to let go. And in my lack of understanding and in my lack of wisdom, I determined to just hold on to God's promises. And from there, it went step by step. You would read that 20 years from now. You would say, by the grace of God. So the challenge of today's message will be very much around the subject, are you today living and applying what you know by the grace of God, or are we somewhere sitting back not doing what we should be doing, and therefore 20 years from now we could be living in misery or in lack of success and whatever is part of that. We are creating history. What will be 20 years? What will be history in 20 years? We're creating that today, in these days. So here's Genesis 18. God said, for I know him. God knows you and me as well. And God knew Abraham that he will, see, that's all future yet. He will commend his children, never had a child, and his household after him. So Abraham will do this. He will commend, and this is what it will do. And they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. I like that. Abraham, in other words, God is telling that Abraham is going to be the kind of a man that it will take for me as God to follow behind him and fill all the needs that will be there, and it will be a success story at the end of Abraham's life. Abraham will do that. Now, since I said we're going to speak of the structure of the home, we're all wondering, okay, yeah, that's good of Abraham, and we could read a lot more of him. What about his wife? We know stuff about Sarah as well. We read about that in Genesis. We read about Sarah in other places, and we read about Sarah in 1 Peter chapter 3. And here's what you read of her. There's more, but this one verse is, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well and are not afraid with any amazement. So let's leave that for right now. We'll leave that. We will go to a few more scriptures in a bit. God said what the outcome of Abraham's household would be. God knew that. God knows what the outcome of your household will be. We all wish and desire to have a home with a good outcome as well. I say that very confidently so. The promises we read in the Bible, how do they apply? Are they even attainable for you and me? And sometimes as parents, as God's people, we tend to doubt this promise. Could I attain something like that? If you have your Bible, turn to Psalm 127. Except the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. It is in vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late. In other words, that sounds very laborious. Get out of bed early, sit up till late at night. It's in vain for you to do that, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. In the German, it brings it out a little bit more clear that God is giving this while they sleep. In other words, you and I can put in so much effort and so much stress and stuff that will just drop on us if we do it right. Then he goes on and focuses more on the family. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. This is a verse that I got to cherish a lot when our children were still very young. And I often thought, God, give us the grace to raise a family that will be able to speak with the enemies in the gates. As you are listening this morning, I feel very convinced that you are with me on that. And if you still have young children that you wish, or if you already have older children, maybe grandchildren, you wish that they would all be people that could speak to the enemies in the gates. In other words, they will be the ones that influence. They will be the ones that will control the enemy. They will be the ones that will know how. And then there's another verse that I find and that goes hand in hand with this, and that is 3 John. The 4th verse, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Now, before I go on with the message, I want to say this. Some of you might be listening today, you might be older, and you might even look back over your family and you say, there's stuff that saddens you. Stuff that you say has not turned out the way you wish. A message like this tends to create guilt. It creates bad conscience. That's not the intent. That's never the intent of God's word. And so therefore I pray that you would not allow this to do that to you if that's how you feel. But nonetheless, there's many of us who are young in this and we are new to it perhaps and we feel so inadequate. Well, here's a lot of good stuff. We want to look at 3 points this morning, and I have called them this way: foundation, action, blessing. So the foundation upon which you and I build our family, that is made by God. Action is the part that you and I do. And then the blessing again comes from God. So you and I, we're sandwiched between, there's the foundation and then action and then blessings on top. So we will probably be focusing a lot on the action part, but we cannot do away with foundation, neither with the blessing. So number 1, the structure, the way we have our home life, needs to rest on the foundation. And we will just take that for granted, but that we are all that are listening today familiar with the foundation of God and of his will and of his word. So we're not going to dig into that much. I'm taking that you read the Bible, and if you don't, you could, you know it's there. Jesus, after he had preached the Sermon on the Mount, or while he was preaching the Sermon on the Mount, he ended it with a very good example, something that the people could connect with, building a house. Therefore, verse 24, Matthew 7:24 says, therefore, whosoever heareth. Yeah, that's right. You have now heard it, these sayings of mine, and doeth them. So you can go home, you have heard a lot of good stuff. The Sermon on the Mount is still something you and I can never quite dip all out of it, but it's so much. You have heard it, now you go and do it. Then you will be likened unto a wise man which builds his house upon a rock. So here comes the hearing part. When I think of this hearing part, then I wonder, what have you heard? As I prepared this message, there was so much, that comes to your mind. It's hard to choose what to take in order not to drag it out too far. Here's one verse that I heard, and I hope that you have heard. As we think of the foundation, that means you will be sitting or standing on something, and as the wind will blow against you, the wind of confusion, the wind of discouragement, the wind of the feelings of inadequacy, the wind of whatever wind you want to think about is going to blow against you. What will you have heard that will make you stand on the foundation? There's this verse that we all know by memory, 1 John 4, verse 4. Ye are children of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is that is in you than he that is in the world. That is a verse that I want to leave with us. That is part of our foundation as we build our homes, as we keep our homes alive. You as a father, you as a mother needs to believe and understand that greater is the one that is in me than the one that I'm dealing with. Oh, does that ever make a difference as a parent? If you approach your challenges with that clarity, that the one that we're fighting is overcome already by the one who's in me. That takes care of so much of anxiety and discouragement and stress and hopelessness that people tend to deal with. Greater is the one that is in you than he that is in the world. Another one that's part of the foundation, that's part of the promise. Isaiah 41:10. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. You know what? My desire and my prayer is, as you listen this morning, verses like this mean very little to somebody that knows them by memory, yet has never connected with them personally. I'm pretty sure that you know this verse by memory. You already know the rest of the verse. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. I will help thee. I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. I have probably shared this before, but it's probably 10, 12, 15, 14 years ago. I was at work. I had this exact verse. I had it in a poster, and I had it attached to the wall. And I stood at the lathe where I stood for hours, and I stood there and I looked sideways, and there was the verse. It hung there. And I was dealing with some issues. I forget what it was. And I know I could read it from my distance. And I read, fear not, I am with thee. And as the verse progresses, and I know I was pleading for God's grace because the things of the future looked very, very difficult to me. And then, for the first time in my life, I could connect that verse. That's exactly what it means. It means that God is with me. He will uphold me. He will strengthen me. If the Bible says that, then it means that. It doesn't matter whether you understand, whether you can feel it, but that's just what it does. And so, for the first time in my life, I think I have to say, I could take that and allow that to create foundation. Now, you that know me, you know that my foundation still needs to be worked on. But this was a tremendous help. That is part of foundation. When we think of foundation, when we think of home, where there's a good foundation, then there's thoughts that come to our mind very quickly. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, reverence your husbands. Nurture your children and admonish them in the Lord. Children, obey your parents. All these things, and we will go into them a little bit more in detail. But a few more of the blessings that are there is, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in the law doth he meditate day and night, and he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in the season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Oh, that means raising a family. That means having a marriage, having your marriage with your spouse. It shall prosper. I don't know, can I ask you something this morning? Have you ever read Psalm 1 before in your life? Have you ever heard of this before? Well, of course, you say, I know it by memory. Do you believe the stuff that it says? You know, it says it. I don't know what else we want to do with that than just, that's what it means. If you and I will delight in the law, we will meditate therein, we will be like a tree planted by the rivers. Those trees always are healthy. They bear a lot of fruit. And whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. That's more than I can chew just like that, if you're with me. Good. That's part of the foundation. The foundation consists of blessings. It consists of promises of the Lord. And it consists also of commandments. Now we will focus a little bit more on the action part. So having a strong home, having a good home requires action. It requires that you and I will actually get off our chair and we do things. Literally, we do and we make action, and things in our homes change. Things in our homes, they form, and stuff happens. Now, the greatest of all mistakes, can you guess what that is? Years ago, I went to Bible school, and this just struck me interesting. There was this saying, the best thing to do is to do things right. The second best thing to do is to do things wrong. And I thought, the second best is the wrong. Yes, the worst thing to do is to do nothing. Isn't that what that keeps us from doing wrong, is because we don't want to do it. So we do nothing and don't realize that my doing nothing is worse than my doing it wrong. So as we raise our family, as we try to keep our marriage vibrant and alive, don't be afraid of not knowing how to. The not knowing how to is not as dangerous as the just, I won't do anything. That mentality is going to crumble and we're not going to be successful. When I think of the many different people that might be listening this morning, I see we have a variety of an audience. Some of us grew up very privileged, very protected. I call it we were pillowed from all corners and all directions. We grew up in a very nice, fuzzy, soft atmosphere. Many of us did. Some of us probably did not have that, but more of an abuse, maybe neglected, and not the protection we needed. And due to that, we got into all kinds of sin. Our life was a mess. And in that sense, we come from a wide variety. The interesting thing is that the answers to success, whether you're on the one side or the other, often are very much the same. The reason of not success is also the same, and that is the lack of action. I find it in my own life, I find as I spend time with other men or other people is that we try to come up with a reason why I am not acting. So many of us can blame it on our upbringing. My dad never was what he should have been. And rightly so, he probably wasn't it. We like to blame it on my level of education. Or I would like to blame it on the opportunities that I was robbed of. And we have a long list that sort of give us a little bit of a sense of satisfaction why I don't pick up and take leadership. Or why I don't pick up and be the wife to the husband that I should be. We try to find some sort of reason so that I can sit back and just continue being me. Lack of acting. If that is you, let's repent. There's no comfort in that. There is no truth in that. Well, the truth might be of the past, might be true, but what I'm saying is there's no truth in that you now have a rightfully right to just sit back and no action. Another problem that we can often make is procrastination. I see the problem. I fear it. Or I'm just simply too lazy. Another problem that we have is we're too busy. There's too many things going on in life. And I cannot focus on the needs of my home or on the needs of my marriage. And so I just sit back. We leave things neglected. Others are overwhelmed. Just before they even start, they're already overwhelmed. Can't do a thing. Just feel hopeless. All I see is problems and failures. We could go on that list, but many of those things, they keep people from acting today. That's not where you want to end up. So my encouragement, let's take action. What we found from God is that he said, Abraham will command. So Abraham will act. I would like to use your name today, but I don't know exactly your name right now, so you can put your own name. But God is saying, and he's using your name, and he's saying that when you will find the opportunity to act, you will act. When you will sense the need of doing something, you're going to do something. Because there will be action happening. And as you and I fill our actions, and as we fill the gaps every time, God comes along and he adds the blessings. Just like he did with Abraham. Abraham wasn't a perfect man, just like you and me aren't. Many of us miss sometimes to understand that God is waiting to bless your actions. God is waiting to multiply your actions. My challenge to you is, are your actions giving God the opportunity to multiply? God is not multiplying the times that you and I sit back and do not do what we should do. There's no blessings in that. But God surely multiplies when you and I just in faith step out and say, God, I don't know how, but I know I want to do something for the benefit of my family. So let's take action. It applies to all of us. Man, you and I got to put effort into knowing and loving God's word. Action. Yeah, literally, you will need to get out of bed perhaps just a half an hour earlier than what you would like to. That's an action. And it pays off. And then seek to apply God's word. Memorize it. Believe it. God's word needs to take authority over culture and over tradition. Maybe later in life we can talk about that last sentence that I just said in a little bit more detail. But here's something that we need to catch. Many of us grew up in a good church setting. We perhaps grew up in a good family. Not all of us did, but many of us did. And many folks that grow up in a good church setting, in a good Christian home, seem to struggle when it comes to where the ball ends in your court to now pick it up and make Bible knowledge, Bible theology connect with my own personal life, and all of a sudden step from culture and tradition to the Word of God and resting my actions strictly on God's Word. A good friend of mine said in tears many years ago, he said, "My children will never amount much to a church member." And I wondered what he meant with that until I finally came to understand that he was trying to raise church members. Good people, good people. I know God did the work in this individual later in his life, where all of a sudden in their home there was Christian life. There wasn't just another tradition or another culture being passed along. There was Christianity. And yes, there were things different after that. God's Word needs to take authority over culture and over tradition and over good habits. We don't need to do away with good habits and traditions, but God's Word needs to rule over that. Secondly, as men and as women, we need to clear our conscience. We will never be a successful parent if I deal with a guilty conscience. If I deal with bitterness, that's your worst enemy. Oh, do house cleaning and make sure, are you harboring bitterness, anger, criticism? These things are poison to raise a family. They pass on, and children grow up in pain. Unbelief is probably one of the biggest things that we allow in our lives without realizing how desperately they block God's blessings in our lives. We tend to allow unbelief. And later we scratch our head and wonder, why is it that so much seems to be so far out? Unbelief. Stand on this foundation of God's promises and take action in commending. Especially, I'm speaking to the men right now. Your household needs to harmonize with God and His will. It will never harmonize with God and His will unless we as fathers will take the stand and commend. I don't know what you think when you think of the word commending, but it almost sounds like a dictator. That's not what we have in mind, but it sounds of something that gives clear direction. We are commending. It's part of being a father. It's part of giving leadership. We're commending. How do we commend? Peacefully. When I look back to my own upbringing, yes, my dad was handicapped with frustration and anger in his life. That was too often the handicap, and he realized that. And I think we all understand part of that. But then there were the times where he was clear and sober about those things, and I sensed that there was a sober and a peaceful commending. I have shared later with people in life, that was in the days when I was still unconverted, but I was totally sure that my plan would not happen. There would be no argument, there would be no fight, but Ronald's plan will not come to pass because there's a man that takes commandment. You know what? As you grow up, those are the things that your children are attracted to. That is where you find security. And many of our children long for that security in our home. Anger, frustration will never give that, but just a peaceful stand on your point. Those are tremendous blessings. Those are tremendous inheritances that we as fathers can give our children by being that. Calmly trust God in taking action. You stand solid. Listen, you're not just a peacemaker. Many fathers want to be peacemakers. Oh, the boys are in trouble. The children are fighting, and we're quickly there and bringing peace there. But the thing is, I have to do that in half an hour. I have to do the same thing again. Dads are not necessarily just peacemakers. They are commenders. What I mean with being commenders means that we will teach our children to live peacefully. And the children know that they have no second choice. They will just have to obey. Calmly, peacefully, lovingly so. It has to be clear, there will be no fightings, there will be no grumblings, there will be no stubbornness allowed to develop in our house, no disrespectfulness. But we will have harmony, we will have cooperation, we will have happiness. Yes, we heard about that in the German message and in the Sunday school class, about being happy. We will give spiritual leadership. Man, I'm looking at us again. We will have a family devotion. That is simply taking action. We will have something in our home that will bring God's word, it will bring God's light into the family. Fathers, take the word of God in whatever level you can and allow God to do the rest. We will have it a living relationship. We will have a family singing. We will have family praying. That doesn't mean that all the problems are solved in that, but it means that you and I were stepping out. It's action. Many of us sit back and would like to have the blessings of that, but are unwilling to take the action. God is waiting to bless your actions and to multiply them. We have Sarah that called Abraham Lord. I like to think of the wives or the women, but in Proverbs 31:30 it says, "But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised." I will focus a little bit on the fearing of the Lord. She also seeks her foundation, and she dwells on the foundation of God's word, of the promises of God's word. She knows that there is where my strength lies. She knows, or she gets to know, that there it is where my satisfaction and my security dwells. You as a woman, you can get lost in thinking that the lack of your security, the lack of your fulfillment is due to your husband's weaknesses. It would be good if he didn't have them, but that's not true. They're here in God's word. Satisfaction, fulfillment. Let God satisfy your soul. 1 Peter 3:4 says, "But let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is no corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and a quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God a great price." The wife, she takes action in keeping her attitude nicely ornamented. I like this. I like to see the gift in my own children, a gift that I have never possessed or never been much after, and that is decorating something. But to see their creative ideas, and they come up with ideas, they hang something on the walls, and all of a sudden your home just looks a little bit nicer. That's beautiful. Just like that, you as a woman, you will find in your attitudes that there's ornaments that you can hang up. There's ornaments that you can apply, something that makes your beauty shine way beyond physical beauty. That takes a lot of action. A lot of the action happens in our minds. We clear up the fog, we clear up the clutter. You do away with frustration. Something that the Lord seems to have shown me in my life, that I harbor frustration, just quiet frustration. Well, we will all deal with frustration in life, but it doesn't take root. It cannot take root. Disappointment. Maybe you're disappointed in your own husband. Maybe you're disappointed in your children. Maybe you're disappointed with other things. We deal with them without letting them destroy our happiness. Or is it hopelessness of children's behaviors? Satan would like you to get discouraged. Oh, the children, when will they ever grow up? And we tend to get hopeless. No. You are a wife or a woman that stands on the foundation of God, who delights in his promises and who takes actions on that. You step out of that which has hindered you. Maybe it's your upbringing, but we step out in faith. We know that God is giving us grace. God is giving me a new chance. She is strong. You are strong. That means in your connection with God, it's not just a strong will. That could be a strong will as well. Like I'm talking about an ornamented strong will. We're not giving up. We're not getting discouraged. And we are honorable. Like we read in Proverbs 31, you rejoice in the times to come. And you seek wisdom. As a wife, as a woman, you guard your mouth against gossip. You know, so easy we can sink into gossiping. And we can get so used to that we don't even catch that. Can I ask you the question? As a woman, are you gossiping? Are we clear with that? What's the talks? Or criticism. As a woman, you seek to be kind. That's action. I seek to be kind. Yeah, it starts in your mind, but I show kindness. It's to my husband. It's to my children. It's to my neighborhood. It's to the community. I'm kind. As a woman, you find comfort. You find strength in living in the will and place of God's word. Years ago, Marcela and me, we sat with a couple that was struggling, a very struggling couple. And the husband obviously was way off from what he should be. And the wife was dealing with a lot of frustration and anger about it. Well, clearly understood so. Every woman would deal with that. As we sat with them, I asked her the question, what's your plan for your life? And she says, like, why do you mean? I say, your husband might never change. He might just stay like he is. Are you planning to live your life in anger and in frustration the rest of it? Because if he will change or not, that is in nobody in this room's capability to change him. He will have to do that. But you as a wife, you have to choose how you want to live. Many of us tend to fall back and say, well, my husband this, and we take sort of shelter in giving us an allowance to be miserable because of the lack of the leaders. No. You find comfort and strength in living in the will and in the place of God's word. Applying God's word into action is often where we find the fountain of strength. You become a living example of meekness, joyfulness in the Lord, letting the grace of God rule your heart. Now finally, the blessing. That's the roof on our homes. It's a given commandment. God commends the blessing over many, read it for yourself, over many actions that you and we as couples, as homes takes, God commends his blessings on it. But we have the commender, which is now the husband as we look at him. We honor the commender as the wife and as the children. We all together, we give the leader the honor that he deserves. We give the wife the respect as the weaker vessel. As children, we catch on to this and we obey. This is a path to leave behind for the family to follow. Father took commandment, mother took the ornamented path of respect, and the children followed in obedience to the commender. Now all of a sudden we have step after step after step where God is commending his blessings on your home. Guaranteed. Are you and I willing to take the actions? I close with a thought out of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. That verse applies or is spoken in the context of ministering. As I said before, let future write you a letter. Meaning that 20 years from now, you will look back to today and you will say, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 10 was my life. I challenge you with wherever you are in your life, whether a husband, whether the wife, or whether the child. Are you what you're doing and living daily? Are you doing that by the grace of God? Does it require the grace of God to be living what you live? In other words, if I grumble in my own discouragement and label myself as disqualified, I ask you, can you do that? Saying, by the grace of God, I am disqualified. By the grace of God, I'm discouraged. By the grace of God, I'm going to resist against my husband, or I am not going to lead leadership into hope. By the grace of God, we're not going to have devotions today. And by the grace of God, I will not check up on my children, how they're doing spiritually. It's by the grace of God that I sit on my couch. You know what? You might be smirking. That's just absolute nonsense if we would start to talk like that. So I challenge us. What are you doing by the grace of God? My encouragement is take action by the grace of God. Not by your own understanding, not by your own abilities, but by the grace of God, I will do what I think I need to do. Or by the grace of God, I will do what I know I should be doing. By the grace of God, I will do that which I fear doing. By the grace of God, I am going to put my trust in the good Lord, and I'm just going not to fear. By the grace of God. As we look back into history, you know what? We all want to turn old if we reach that age, and we all want to be able to say, it's by the grace of God that I am what I am. It's by the grace of God that my family is what it is. There's nobody of us that will say 25 years from now and say, look at us, we did it, and we got the honor, we get the medal. No, we're all going to end up in success saying, by the grace of God. Nobody takes honor. Can I pray with us? Lord, you are the good God. Oh, Father, we sit back and we are overwhelmed at times to think of what our life is like or could be like in your grace. God, we feel so humbled, and we feel like, who are we, God, that you remember us? Today, as we have dug into the subject of the home, oh, Father, pray, give everyone the courage to lift up its feeble knees and to step up again and say, by the grace of God, we're going to make the next step. By the grace of God, I will do what I should do. And Lord, that we will focus on what we could be in your power, in your grace, and that we will take the focus off of ourselves. I pray that each one that deals with discouragement, each one that might deal with finding excuses not to act, God, I pray that we would all get encouraged to step up and say, by the grace of God, I'm willing to take action. And we ask your blessing again. In Jesus' name, amen.